All right, buckle up, everybody. The Last of Us is back. It's up early because of the Super Bowl on Sunday. The Last of Us episode 5. This one, this is a spoiler review, by the way. So you didn't know that, bail, because this is a spoiler review. Hence the title, spoiler review. This kicked my ass, big time. This was a phenomenal episode on so many different levels. Emotional, furthering the story, continuing the brilliant writing that I just have been so impressed by. And the thing that I like the most about the writing are little things that you pick up. And coupled with the really brilliant acting, there's certain little subtleties that happen throughout this show that if you go back and you watch them again and you just pick it up. And there's something at the very end of it, this is to me, Bella Ramsey's, she's been great throughout the entire series, but this was her best for sure. I think I don't know when they shot this, but it seemed like the character is getting more eased into. And as I said, I thought she was great from the second she popped onto the screen in episode 1, but I just think that she's just giving so much life to Ellie. And I'm making this clear to everybody already. I had never played the game before, and I am playing the game up into the points where the last episode ended, so I don't get spoiled. And I know that they deviated a couple times throughout it. I'm a little behind actually in the game right now, so I'm going to have a lot to play leading up to next week's episode 6. But there's just so many things that are happening. And Pedro Pascal's doing the same thing with Joel, man. Like, Joel's become one of my favorite characters on TV from just the little things that you learn about him and who he really is inside, and what this mask has been for the last 20 years after the death of his daughter. There's a lot of really emotional stuff happening with the idea of fatherhood, siblings, emotionally how you deal with things, think you're protecting. And I think even like the role of Kathleen, played brilliantly, I think, by Melanie Linsky, who, man, we learned a lot. We learned a lot in this episode. So if you're brand new to the show, by the way, you've never been here before, go ahead and show a little class, will you? Subscribe. We're almost at 70,000, man. We're not too far. We're trying to hit 70 by February. So if you're here first time, like, I don't know, I'm going to just hit the freaking subscribe button, will you? It doesn't cost you shit. Just do it. And we got a lot of other things. We got an Ant-Man out of the theater reaction. We got a Creed 3 out of the theater reaction. I saw both of them. They're up there now. You can watch that. There's other reviews coming out, all of that. And you can be here for it. And Last of Us, I cover it every week. I do an immediate reaction to the episode after I watch it. And then I do the spoiler review. So let's get into those spoilers. What I loved about it right away was the start, and I liked the kind of Tarantino-esque type thing that they did in the beginning, meaning to just, you just say Tarantino because he's the first person you kind of think of doing this type of thing in backward storytelling, right? Like our last episode, we saw Henry and Sam approach Joel and Ellie in the room, but now we get to this whole thing of how this town was liberated, and this is what I love about the show. It's like as we said, there's really no good guys and bad guys. It's good guys making bad decisions or bad guys making good decisions, and it's interesting. It's really interesting. And then so Fedra, which are a bunch of scumbags, and you hear what they were doing with the torture for the last 20 years. They got ousted, and the people took over, and they brutally took over. They're beating the piss out of people with bats, shooting them in the head, stringing them up on the ropes, and all. And what we find out is it only happened like 10 or 11 days ago. And you see it, and they're screaming, fuck Fedra, and they're running people over, saying if you come out now, you'll get a trial. Get your ass out here. And they just power to the people. They took over, and then we find Henry and Sam, because we still don't know at this point, like, what the hell did Henry do? She wants him so bad. Like, what did he do? Like, what was he part of Fedra? Was he the guy? Like, what happened? And the doctor, what was going on with him? There was such a short role for that guy, and we find out more about him in this episode, and the way that they weave that in there, because we've already been connected to these people. Well, we were connected to the doctor because we're like, oh man, it's like there was a little bit more to that guy. And when we see him again, we're like, oh yeah, that guy was how that happened. Oh, he was good. He was helping Henry and Sam out, right? But you learn so much, or we're curious about Henry because of how bad Kathleen wanted him. And then at the end of the episode, you see the two of them, and we wonder, why does this little kid have this like war paint on? And we get all that. And then when we saw it in episode 4, and this, by the way, where a lot of people had said that episode 4, people liked episode 4 a lot, but they said out of all the episodes, I think episode 4 to me wasn't the strongest. I think that episode 5 makes episode 4 even stronger, because this was essentially like almost like a 2-hour and 15-minute episode overall, even the way that it plays, right? You get so connected to all this. And then by the time we finally get to Henry and Sam, and we find out that Sam is indeed deaf, and it's something that they added apparently in the game. He was not, but they added to it. And Neil Ruckman was like, oh, man, I wish I would have thought of that. And he's watching. Henry's watching. And this just goes into that protector mode of, all right, I got to get my brother the hell out of here. I got to figure out how to do this. And then we jump to, because at first I was a little confused because I didn't know where we were exactly. And then you pick it up pretty fast once Kathleen's talking to everybody, and she's like, all right, well, where is he? Again, how bad she wants him. And then once the dude says that he's with the doctor, he's like, oh, well, he was a lot more subtle than you assholes, you idiots, whatever she called him. And this to me, though, in the fourth episode, Kathleen was kind of, it was like she was hardened and had to make these choices as this leader. But in the 5th one, you really, I mean, there are definitely hints in the 4th one of when she kind of ignores, and it comes back to literally bite her in the ass when she ignores the sinkhole and all that stuff. And but because we find out more so in 5 what's really driving her, and that's this lust for revenge to get Henry, who is ultimately responsible for killing her brother. And that's what drives her. She's a good leader. She has done what she needed to do to take over. She might have been fueled by anger and fueled by it, but she did it. But it just, the irony in her telling, Henry, you should have just let him die, because you're going down, because ultimately fate's fate. And that's the same advice she should have given herself. Let her brother die, take over, do your thing, and lead these people to freedom instead of worrying about this, because this lust for revenge is just going to lead you down the wrong path. So we get this. We really get that from her and we find out how ruthless she is. I mean, she doesn't give a shit about Fedra. Like, everything involved with it. Anybody, any collaborators or anybody involved in it, fuck them. And she tells Perry as much. She's like, what's and she even says, she's like, what's your number one? He tries to talk her out of it at the point. He's like, there's other things we got to do. And she's like, what's your priority? What's your number one? And he's like, yeah, you're right. And then he's like, are we putting these people on trial? She's like, no, just burn the bodies, makes it easier. And you're like, okay, she is damn ruthless. And and you really get that reason why throughout it, of why she's and there's a great scene later on when she explains kind of the comparison between herself and her brother, which great stuff here, by the way, from Melanie Lynskey. I thought she was brilliant in this episode. But the stars of this episode, for sure, to me, were both Sam and Henry. And Henry was played by Lamar Johnson. And then we have this newcomer, this new kid, Sam, played by Kevin Montreal Woodard. This kid is adorable. They cast a deaf actor, and both Bella Ramsey learned how to speak in sign language, as well as both Lamar Johnson. So they both learned it, and they learned it fast. And they were talking about that in the after thing. But they both were fantastic. And you believe them as brothers. And Henry's got to play this role where he's like the dad, and his only job is just to protect his brother. That's it. That's all he's got to do. He just wants So it's the whole reason they're in this mess in the first place. Because, he had to rat to get the kid medicine. And he did what he had to do. And it's like he put him, and it's like these positions of what do you do in that point? And then you have this scene with the doctor where you have him back, and we get back to that. And this is why I like the way they shot this, because if they would have shot this first and showed you all this first, you don't have that kind of feeling when you watch it again going, oh yeah, the drawings and oh, the food that was left there. That's cool. It's like, I like the device when it's done well. And there's a great line there where you go back to it where the doctor says to him, he sees that you're scared. You gotta talk to him. And he's got that, and the drawings and all this, and the way that it just plays, and he has a conversation about what did he say? How many days can we last? We can last a few. Don't worry, don't be scared. And then he flipped 10 days later where we get to the juice of the story of where we kind of essentially left off, or even started, I guess, or midway through episode 4. And when shit really starts to go down, they realize that the doctor, he ain't coming back. And we know why. Because Kathleen killed his ass. And there's a great scene that he realizes he's not coming back. I mean, watching from up top, this shot here, man, this is one of the many shots that emotionally just got me. And again, the brilliant acting by both. And I think what Lamar Johnson does right here, he's just holding this kid. He's just holding him, like realizing, what am I going to do? How am I going to protect this kid? How am I going to do it? And he's holding him. And if you watch that scene again, he's holding him for a while. It's like and it's just he's in like this bear hug, and it felt so real. It felt so real. Like this is comforting to both of us, but it's also where Henry's going. I gotta really figure out what is next. I'm lost. I don't know what to do. I don't know what the plan is, and that gets us into where we ultimately land, because then he hears the crash. He sticks his head out the window, and the next as they're moving, they get out of that place, and they start to go on the run. And that's where, and I love this other perspective of that crazy car scene that we saw last week when Joel and Ellie are stranded into the town. And again, the acting by this kid, man, the little guy, he doesn't know what's going on. He just kind of feels it, and he's such great acting. He's been in 2 things, by the way, including this. He was just shuddering and like want to know what the hell's going on. And then there's this great long shot of Joel, and that's when Henry realizes that's the guy. New plan. Let's figure this out. If they can take out some of those dudes, then we should probably go find them, because they're clearly not on their side. So let's go figure this out. And this is where I like the switch. It's like, I think that probably some people were going to be, I wasn't, but I'm sure people were going to be, as they were watching, going, okay, is this what Last of Us is going to do now? They're just going to do full episodes of other people that we don't care about in general. But they didn't do that. They went everything about these. We're gonna give you so much juice of who these 2 guys, the kids, even Henry, kids, who they are. And we're going to give you so much emotional attachment to them. So by the time they get to Joel and Ellie, and by the time they're stepping on that glass, to get back to where we left you in episode 4, there's so much more there than there would have been had we started with them holding. Because a lot of times what shows would have done is, when they sneak into the room, and the glass is there, and he hears the glass, and a lot of times what you would have done in the show is this is where it would have picked up. And then all of that stuff that we got from them, we would have gotten in like a little scene, maybe them talking about, oh yeah, so with the doctor and blah, blah, blah. And you wouldn't have the same attachment to it. You would have gotten all of it that through exposition in a particular scene. And here, by the time we get there, and they do give you a little information about, it's more so about, again, playing into their relationship of what kind of people they are. And the fact that he's asking questions about them. Where'd you get this food? How? And Sam thanks them for the food. And it's little things like that they could focus on because they've given you all that stuff leading into it and how they got there. And I thought it was just really, really well written, brilliant. And then we get into ultimately, how the hell are we getting out of here? And as I've said many times over in all these spoiler episodes, I love the set design. I love the look of this world. It tells you exactly what it is. And you find out more information here, but you find out the big information, as I had already mentioned, but we find out like why Henry is in the shits and why they're after him. And he's telling them, all this stuff is I'm wanted. And Joel's like, well, why are you Fedra? And he's like, worse. I'm a collaborator. And this is another reason why I like Joel so much. Joel does what we all do a lot of times, is that we act sometimes emotion first, or sometimes people are guilty of just prejudgment. And he's like, I don't work with rats. And he says later on, he goes, I'm sorry. I didn't know your situation. I didn't ask about your situation, and I just kind of judged it. And when you find out the situation, you put yourself in that position. Nobody knows what you would do. You say, I know what I would do. No, you don't. You don't know what you would do in that situation. If that's your little brother and you have a chance to save him, you don't know what you would do. Some of you say, I wouldn't have a rat on the person because they're a good person and they had, they could lead the resistance and all that. I don't know if any of you have kids. I asked myself that question when I was watching. My 5-year-old or my 11-year-old in that position, what do I do? And I think Kathleen's going to be coming after me, guys. So I understood it. I get it. And I think that's the point. And it's killing him inside. And you got that from how brilliant of a performance it was, but it's killing him inside. But that doesn't, he doesn't break down inside of that emotional to be that vulnerable yet to tell him how bad. That's later. Here, he knows he's got to present his situation, and he's truthful about it, which is another big thing about this character. He's truthful about it, even though he tells him a little later about who it was when he says, I never killed anybody, and the most I ever really did was pull that unloaded weapon on you. I'm not a violent guy. That's why we need you. Because Joel says to him, why do you need me? Because you can get us out of here. But it's just this whole thing where he's got it. At this point, he's not vulnerable about nothing. He's just saying, bullshit, you're not going to work with me because I can get you out of here. And I'm going to get you out of here. But and it was a great line. It's something along the lines of, I'm going to show you the way and you're going to clear it. And that's what happens. And then I said to my wife last night as I was watching, I said to her, you really turned me into a sappy old dad, because in this scene here, when you hear the little guy laugh and he just looks over, and one of my favorite sounds in the world are like kids laughing. Baby screaming is the thing that drives me nuts, but kids laughing, it's just infectious, right? So he looks, and this shot and it's just look at that shot right there. It's such a great comparison of because Joel's trying to fight this. Joel has been, for the last 20 years, this hardened guy who's been running around with, Tess, and there's been no these attachments. He's left that life behind him. He doesn't want to allow himself to get there because that could be a detriment to him. But Henry, when Henry hears that, and Henry's like, I haven't heard that forever. Like, and it's also really good for Ellie. And then they're devising this plan, and he's like, we're going to go in the tunnels. And he starts to tell him, he's like, yeah, well, where are what'd you notice? Like, well, there's no infected. He's like, no, there's infected. They were all run down into the tunnels. And he's like, well, why the hell are we going to go in there? It's like, well, they're not there anymore. That's what I was told. And they're like, okay. So it's the same thing. And I love that just a couple of the subtleties inside of that. Is like, you guys fought clickers and lived? Well, I found the right people. And they go down the tunnels, and this shot to me down in the tunnels, by the way, it's very reminiscent of some of the gameplay, at least in the earlier stages of the gameplay. So I was as I'm watching, I'm like, this is really interesting to watch this and the way that they shot it, because you're thinking at any minute like one of the infected is going to pop out, but doesn't happen. What does happen though, what is so interesting is this, and apparently this is from the game too, and I didn't play the game itself yet, this part, but they get to this like shelter here, and it's where I guess you can pick up letters and you can look at things that of tell like separate stories of what went down here. And I was like, and Joel says it, and it's like these are the kind of lines that they throw, and I've heard about places like this. And for us, it's like, well, what did you hear? And he's like, well, they set up these camps and stuff for settlements for people thought they could kind of set up these little communes to stay safe, and then they have this set of rules. And it's like, well, what happened to them? It's like, well, obviously they didn't follow the rules, and people got infected, and there you go. So this was like a nice bit of peace for them too, because, and what I also liked about it, I was worried about kind of I don't want to say cliche, but a predictable more so, where, all right, well, they're going to go down there and a bunch of the infected are going to come out. They're going to have to fight them. They're going to do this. And that's not what happened. It was just more of the humanity of what was kind of lost and trying to regain back. And this great scene when you have Sam picking up this comic book and looking at it, and then Ellie bonding with him and almost like a little brother. And this is, to me, some of the best stuff. As I mentioned, there's a lot of great stuff that Bella Ramsey does in this, but this was one of the scenes that she's talking to him and she's just having this conversation with him and saying, you know, and they're talking about the comic book, and she's really bonding with him, and you can tell how much they get along. And you see like the flip side now, and this was the conversation I was talking about with Joel and Henry, where he's like, I shouldn't have judged you. And he's like, well, let me tell you like the real truth behind it. And then you get into that conversation of like, what would you do? And he's like, look, there was this medicine. My brother had cancer, and I ratted out the guy who was a really good guy. He's a great guy, and I ratted him out, and they took him out because of me. And I did a bad thing. And it's like, yeah, and he saved his brother in the process. So because of it, Kathleen wants him dead. So it was like this bonding moment also between the two of them, because and Henry even looks at him, and this was another thing that I thought was great, was Henry looks at Joel, and he's like, you might not be her dad, but you were somebody's dad. And Joel doesn't say anything. He just kind of sits there in it, but we know. And we know that this is kind of like that version of Joel slowly coming back. But this was the scene, though, that I think we got a lot from Kathleen, and probably the best scene so far from Melanie Linsky is where her and Perry are having this conversation in the room, and she's in her old room talking about her brother. Again, the difference in the loss of she talks about how different her brother was, and how, because we just got this setup from Henry of how good this guy was, and we've already known that just from that one scene. We know already who he was. And then so when she's talking about him, we understand it, we know it, and she's like, he told me, just forgive. She's like, I can't. It's not who I am. And and then Perry even says, yeah, but the thing is, your brother was a great guy. He was great, but he didn't lead us to overthrowing Fedra. You did. And it's like a weird thing, because it's that anger and it's that drive and it's that that lust again for revenge that helped her fuel the overthrowing them. But in the same aspect, it was also the reason why it led to her downfall. And she's in this conversation, and then now they're out, and Henry's all happy. And the second time they get all happy, going, my plan worked. You know that the plan didn't work. Well, it worked. You just knew it wasn't going to be easy ride. It wasn't going to be, anything but difficult. And that's exactly what happened. Because then the sniper starts hitting, and Joel's like, this guy can't shoot for anything. He's like, I'm gonna get him out of you. Stay put. He's got what is he? I think he says shit frame or something. And he goes, and he gets his way through. And he says, stay put. And as he gets there, you see this old man just kind of sitting there doing his thing. And again, you talk about Joel And you really understand Joel so much in this. Because he tells him, he goes, look, man, slide the weapon over, give it to me, and stay here for an hour, and that's all you have to do. And the old guy is looking up, and he starts to move, and this performance by Pedro Pascal is brilliant, because he goes, come on. He goes, don't. And he goes, please don't. Because he is not someone who has been his humanity has not been taken away from him. His humanity is not lost in sight of like, all right, fine, boom. And there's a lot of people out there in this world, I would assume, that would just take this old man out without him talking to him. But Joel's like, come on, please. And then the old man makes a move, and Joel does what he has to do. And we find out that he's working with Kathleen anyway, and then it all goes down from there. And this is, again, just the rhythm of this show is just, they're just in the zone right now. And you can tell it from the writing. You can tell when they're writing this, they're in the zone because of the rhythm of all of this. So after Joel takes him out, he sees that, Kathleen is like, just hold him there. We're going to be there any second. And then it all goes down. The cars are flying through, and it reminded me of, I don't know if you guys have seen Harlem Nights, but there's a scene where Arsenio Hall is and his buddy are tracking down Eddie Murphy, and they're shooting at him through the window. And his buddy's got this little like pistol, and they're shooting a machine gun through the window, and then and then his buddy's like popping off this gun that's not doing anything. And Arsenio Hall gets so mad at him. He's like, what are you doing with that stupid gun? Get out of here. He throws it. And it reminded me of what it's just instinct. But as Ellie's running, she's just like shooting that pistol at this armored car. And it's like, what are you doing? You don't do anything. It's just instinct. But then once again, Joel just goes into motion. He's got the sniper rifle, and he's just firing away. And he finally gets through. And then because of this whole chain of events, the car goes right through the house. Boom. But that's going to set up all the infected coming in later. But this was a good scene, though, too, because I didn't really kind of know what was going to go down. And this is where we get ultimately what this whole show is about right here. And the idea of Henry tries to tell him, he goes, tell her, you don't know why I did this. She's like, I know exactly why you did it. But what I'm trying to tell you is you should have let fate take its course, which is the same advice she should be taking herself. And Henry comes out. It looks like, and I didn't know. I was like, is she going to take him out? Are they going to wind up just being, is Joel going to have to take care of both these kids now? And then that sinkhole kind of takes its place. And then Kathleen knows what's coming. And it all goes crazy here. All the infected come flying out. And Joel's picking them off one way. He's pretty safe from where he is. But clickers are in there, and then he's protecting Ellie at all costs. That's what he's doing. And then this guy comes out, the bloater. I guess he's part of the game too. But the bloater to me seems the one who's got the most sense. He's picking up people Undertaker style and choke slamming them and doing all that kind of stuff and ripping heads off. And he's got a little bit more wits to him than the rest of them. But yeah, the bloater is like something out of like a monster movie, and the clickers are like straight out of horror films. But the bloater is not messy. It's like Groot. The bloater is like Groot, like an evil Groot. And from the back there, Perry eats it. There goes the voice of Tommy in the video games. Ellie gets through, but then this creepy kid comes flying out. And this is where I didn't pick this up. My wife picked it up, but Henry and Sam are underneath the car. Ellie comes in and she saves them. You're like, oh, they made it through. And Kathleen, she got him. She cornered him again, but not this time. The creepy kid from the back leaps at her, takes her out, and we're scot-free. So we think. Now this scene was, the idea when Joel and Henry is sitting there, and he's like, "Why don't you come with us?" And he's like, "All right, we're coming with you. We're gonna take the ride with you, and we'll have the adventure together. And nobody has to be lonely." And I get it, like. You don't realize because the kids are the innocents. They don't have to look up, they don't have to protect anybody, and that's what we're here for. And this is the second time, well, not second time. I'm sure there's many times that Joel, at least in the show, that Joel has connected and understood. Like it was Bill who was the version of himself, and now he's got Henry, who's a version who's got. They're both protecting, and Joel's starting to relate, saying there is stuff to protect for. It's what Tess told him. Protect or find someone to save, whatever the message was, whatever it was. There's a reason. And Bill, same thing. Have a reason. And where Kathleen was saying that your reason isn't, you got to let your reason go sometimes, they stuck with the reason. And it's the more that, Joel is hanging out with these types of people and the more that he's spending time with Ellie, his humanity's coming back. But it's also more scary because he's got more to lose now. And he thinks he's got someone to share that with. And so Henry comes in, he tells him, he goes, you got to go to sleep now. And they have this great scene between the two of them. It's Sam and Ellie, and they're talking. They're going back to the comic thing and going back, and Henry's like, do you ever get scared? She's like, yeah, I'm scared. What, scorpions or whatever. And then they have this like really sweet conversation. And then I was like, where are they going with this? And he flips it over, and if you turn into a monster, is it still you inside? And I went, no. And then they show the bite. And I was like, oh my God. My wife's like, it was the first time that I'm watching something. My wife's like, I knew it. And it's usually the other way around. I didn't see this one coming, and I haven't played the game yet of this part. So then Ellie decides, I'm gonna give you my blood because I'm the cure. And I went, this can't work, because if so, why didn't she do that with Tess? And my wife's like, yeah, exactly. Why don't you do the Tess? And then so Ellie tries, and she gives it to him. And at the same time, though, even though I was thinking, okay, maybe it works for kids. Maybe there's something with kids that it works. So she kind of puts her hand on his wound and hopes that the blood kind of gets in there. And then he just says, just stay awake. And she wakes up the next day, and here he is sitting on the bed. And it ain't him. The little guy got infected, and he jumps after her. And this scene was just brutal to watch, because Joel cannot protect. He can't do it because he's got a pistol on him, and he knows what he needs to do. But Henry's got it. And Henry, the right goes through him, and he takes out Sam. And he just, this looked, wow, God, the acting in this scene was just incredible all the way around. But he's just like, what did I do? And he can't deal with the pain anymore, because it's it was the reason why he was there, and his reason is gone. And so he's out. And this is the scene, to me, that there's a little like kind of yelp that Bella Ramsey lets out when Henry takes himself out. And it's just so, like, I teared up. And it's like they're both at this loss, and they're both the burying of them and going on. This is the first kind of main big loss that you feel kind of Ellie have. And she's, she has this attachment, and then that's it. She apologizes to Sam. They're on their way out, and so the adventure continues. I love that shot on the way out. But man, it was devastating, and I think that it was so powerful from the optimism of it. If you look at it, even though it's a big gut punch, this episode, but the optimism is how much Joel has changed from where we saw him in episode 1, and then fast forwarding 20 years later, watching this relationship he's got with Ellie, and the same thing with their bond, and how now he does have a major thing to lose, because she's not cargo to him anymore at all. There's too much already within this short adventure that they've had together. There's just too much, and especially after you go through something like this together. And I think that's just a testament to the writing. That's a testament to the way this movie, exactly, film, movie, same thing. This show is shot. And I want to know from you guys, though, if you've played the game. I know that some people are really liking how they're deviating from the game, and then there's some people who don't. I know that there's some similarities to what they did in this and some differences. What do you think? Go ahead and let me know. What do you think of the episode overall, and what do you think of the series so far? Make sure you comment for sure, and obviously, if you haven't done this already, show a little class and hit the subscribe button. Hit that button. We're almost at 70,000, so we need you to help out. Do that, and we'll be back here. So there's a lot going on tomorrow, by the way. There's something like 8 to 10 trailers. I don't know how many, but there's going to be a lot of trailers tomorrow. So I'll be watching those. They'll be uploading all day tomorrow. So if you want to join me for that, you can. And then we'll be back to do Last of Us for sure next week. But there's time. We got Katie Sackhoff interview going up on the channel on the 27th. As I said, some the non-spoiler review of Ant-Man Quantumania comes out on Tuesday. So we got a lot going on the channel. We hope that you join us. Thanks for joining us today, though. It's The Last of Us, Episode 5. Peace.